Okay, this is one of my most exciting podcasts because teaching and sharing about freezer food cooking is literally one of my favorite things, and it just comes naturally because I've done it so much. I've also got some fun kitchen tips for you. So this is kind of a tip for the day, lots of tips. So hold on, here we go. In the kitchen, first of all, dishes. It is hard to be the person in charge of all these dishes. And I grew up in a family with 8 children, and we would be given a week that we were in charge of the dishes. And mom had the list where, everything had to be put away, and the counters had to be clean, and the dishes had to be done, and the floor had to be swept. And oh my goodness, it was like a 2-hour event to clean up after 10 people and whoever made dinner, and I had to do it for a week. Now, it was nice to have a big long break, but that was not fun. And so as I had a young family, or visiting my brother once, and at the end of dinner, he was like, okay, and they all jumped up and they all helped, and all the dishes were done, and before you knew it, everything was put away, and within 5 minutes time, the kitchen was clean because they all did it. And he said, nobody's allowed to leave the kitchen until the kitchen's all cleaned up. So we immediately adopted that rule. I loved it, and it was really fun to have that become the standard at the Wildings. You just don't leave until we're all done. And it makes it fast. It makes it something we do together. And it's just a great way to go. So then I started freezer food cooking. Freezer food cooking, going to explain in a minute, and then I'm going to tell you some of the benefits. So freezer food cooking is, picture a Stouffer's lasagna that you buy from the freezer section at your store. What they've done is they've cooked the meat, they've put the seasoning in with the meat, and then they've put the lasagna layered together, and they've packaged it up and sold it to you. You take it from their freezer to your freezer, you take it out of your freezer and you cook it, and then you serve it for dinner. Well, what freezer food cooking is it is cooking up the meats, usually cooking up the meat, and not always, but most meals. And then you put it together, and then you put it in the freezer. And then you pull it out of the freezer and defrost it. And when you cook it, it's as if you just put it together. Now, some people mistake it for being, you cook it and then you freeze it and then you kind of reheat it. That's not what it is. It's cooking it as if you just put it together. So because I figured this out really well and over a long period of time, golly, probably over 15 to 20 years. I've been doing it for 25, but after about 15 years, I figured out how to do it more than just cook on a day for a month's worth of, is how I started. And I figured out how to cook for about 3 or 4 days and fill both my freezers to the brim, and didn't have to cook for a whole year. So I know that's crazy. Shalene's crazy a bit like this, but cooking's not my thing. It's not something I love to do. So I had to figure out how to do it, how to feed my family, and then have lots of time to do other things that I wanted to do. But there were some things that I lost in all of that. Absolutely number one is I did not teach my children to cook as well as I should have, because I would cook all day while they were at school and get the freezers full, and then the meals were ready to go. So I did a little better with my younger 3 daughters, because in the summertime I would have them cook a meal times 2. We'd have one for dinner and would put the other one in the freezer, and they would learn how to make some of the freezer meals. And that worked out really well. They were so happy when they were the one we were bringing out, this chicken pot pie that they'd made a month before, and oh, thank you for making dinner tonight. This is great. And it was just a super way of helping them learn a little bit better than I taught the older children. So that's the biggest negative. Everything else is positive. I have gotten to know my recipes so well that I know what to get when it's on sale. I know I'm going to be using a lot of this canned tomatoes, or I'm going to be using a lot of this enchilada sauce, and so when things are on sale, I stock up on those certain items, and I buy things in bulk. And when I'm ready to cook, it's boom to boom, boom, boom. Those meals are all put together and it's done. And it's a big mess in the week that I do it. I remember the day Joe helped me, and it was just so awesome when he was cleaning right behind me as I went, and every step of the way it was just clean, clean, clean. That was awesome. But it's a big mess when you do it. And because you haven't made the meal on the day that you eat these meals, you didn't make a mess in the kitchen. Big plus. So the cleaning of the kitchen I just talked about with the family, super fast. Not a lot of time spent there. Another super great tip is that, okay, of course, money savings because you bought things on sale, you bought things in bulk, and you have a lot of money savings. You have a lot of time in the afternoon when you would normally be getting the meal together to spend with your family. To me, that was the best part. I didn't have to spend, well, you still spend a little time because it's usually the main dish and you're adding, you know, vegetables or a salad and there's a few other things to get ready for dinner, but you're not putting that main dish together. And so it doesn't take as long, and that time in the afternoons that is so precious with our children, it was spent with the children, and I love that. So really super cool reason to freeze your food cook. Okay, I'm also a little bit nutty. I know you're thinking, I'm not gonna cook for a year. What are you thinking? And so I certainly don't think that you should do that. What I'm thinking and what I always tell people when I teach the class, and if you would like me to teach a class somewhere, please let me know because I love to share. When I teach a class, I always say, please just make at least 2 of something. Make 2 so you have one for dinner and you freeze the other one, because it doesn't take that much longer to make 2. And then it's ready for another day. So you may think, you really put meals in there for a whole year? Do you know that the last meal I pull out before I clean my freezer and start over again, it's always good. Freezers are much better than they used to be. And so don't worry about us at the Wilding House eating freezer burnt food, and you cover them tightly, they last, freezers work better than they used to. May not be quite as nutritionally sound after it's been in the freezer for a year, but it sure is nice to have those meals ready to go. And we have our favorites. The favorite ones that I make, 10 of this one, not just 2 or 3, because I know we're gonna be having those a lot. Oh, and I love to give them away. It is so great to have all these meals ready to go and somebody needs a meal and you're like, boom, sure, here you go. So that's another super, there's lots of other reasons, but I do have my recipe book that is just my recipes. It's nothing fancy, no big fancy pictures or anything, but it's on my Absolutely Joyful page, Facebook group page, and it's under files. And you can find my whole cookbook there if you want some recipes to try. I've got some recipes in there that are good for breakfast. I was not an early riser. I mean, I would get up and take care of my family, but to get up an hour earlier and get breakfast going wasn't really my thing. So I have a lot of ideas in there of meals that I would do in the freezer for breakfast. You can also put oatmeal in a crock pot and plug it in with a Christmas timer so that it goes on at about 3 in the morning and just cooks your oatmeal for a couple of hours. And all my oldest child would have to do is add a little bit of sugar, and I'd put the salt in and the oatmeal in and the water in, and Daniel would add a little bit of sugar and some milk, and then the kids would have their oatmeal. Anyway, great ideas to do things early in the morning. A couple more fun tips. Picky eaters. When I had picky eaters, I have the coolest story. I remember this one meal that nobody liked. It was broccoli and rice and green onions, and nobody liked it. And I loved it. And so I just kept serving it. The next week I served it, the next week I served it. And pretty soon they learned to love it, and it became one of our family's favorite meals. So I would like to just give you that tip. If you have a picky eater, just keep feeding them things and offering them things that they may not want, and I bet they'll learn to like them. I used to be a Tupperware dealer, and I had the option of getting parts. And I don't know if they still do that, but I could get teaspoons and tablespoons and half cups and cups, just not the whole sets, but just those pieces. And so I took my salt container and I keep a teaspoon stuck in there. So every time I go to get salt, I do not have to look through the drawer. I am able to just, boom, there's the teaspoon, and I'm ready to go with salt. And in the sugar, there's a half cup, always there. In the flour, there's always a cup there. There's a few other ones that I keep those in, but I love that tip. You might be able to get some sets at the dollar store and just use the pieces you want, but that's a great Oh, so fast in the kitchen. And then my last one is one I just got. They're called Super Cubes, S-O-U-P-E-R. I'll have to do a post on this soon. But Super Cubes are a kind of like ice cube trays, bigger, sturdier, made of silicone, have metal in them. They work in the oven, except for the lid. And they come with lids. They come in 2 cup sizes, 1 cup, half cup, and little tiny cubes. But I am able to make soups and meatloaves and broths and all these things because I love using my freezer. I'm able to put what's left over into those, freeze them, pop them out, put them in bags, and take up less space in my freezer, have them ready to go when I need it. I just pulled out, like yesterday, I just pulled out some chicken broth that I already had, made in a cube, and threw it into some vegetables that I was doing. Just super easy, fast, ready to go. So Super Cubes is another great kitchen tip and freezer tip. And I'm so thankful for freezers, and I really don't like to cook. So it's so funny that I found that freezer food cooking has been so right for me. But love sharing these tips. Hope you enjoyed it. It was a little long today. Have a great day.